All I want to do today, pretty much, is just to go through and explain, because I've been looking at solar taxonomy for a little while now. I looked at it back in 2009, I'll talk about that, but it's only really come to the forefront again quite recently by going on Twitter and linking in there with loads of teachers around the country who use it as well and sharing ideas and stuff. I write a lot about it as well, it's pretty cool, so I can guide you to some stuff which I've been writing about how I've been successfully using it. And obviously Sean and so on sort of came out in an LTG the other month about how he'd seen something, and I said, oh, this is what I'm doing, and it was the same thing. So it's kind of joined up some thinking which has gone around, and obviously it's gone forward. And then other people have been coming to me saying, I've heard you know a little bit about it, can you lead a session on it? So yes, I will. It looks quite easy. So, oh, there's some more. Right. Pretty much, I'm going to try and deliver the solo session using solar taxonomy, so you guys can actually see how I'm going to deliver like a lesson as such. Probably obviously for that's about 35-40 minutes. So what I've done is I've got you a little notes page as you could use it. You don't obviously have to use these in the lessons as such, but I'm trying to structure it as best I can. So as I go through and explain what each of the different levels are and why you would use them and how you would use them, then feel free to make notes about them. But the most important thing is I've got these, which is a sort of a success criteria, saying what you know about solar taxonomy. So if you could, please, in sort of like your pairs or your group, have a look at the sort of criteria, the rubrics as we call it, and see what sort of level you're starting at. Are you at the top already? Are you at the middle, at the bottom? Where out? And discuss why are you at it? Do you know anything about it? Do you not? So I'll give you about a minute or two just to have a little read through and Okay, so have a look at the rubrics thing. If I can try that. It's got the little level symbols down the side and explain what those mean as we go through. But just out of interest, I don't know, where are people roughly at? Miriam, do you? New, so probably near the little dot at the bottom maybe, or one of the little strands.
We're on here according to
the pre-structural. Chris, you've done I've sent you loads of
nearish the top, but not at the top yet.
No, so nearly sort of like maybe relational yet. Okay, Phil.
I've never used it.
I never used it.
I thought about playing piano, looking at that.
Yeah, that's the way. It's a musical thing. So yeah, okay, cool.
You need to buy a new piano. There's obviously not got enough notes on.
Good. These are really, really quite key, and they're one of the main features of solar taxonomy. It's a rubrics. It's a way that students can assess their progress and so on. And I'll show you how we can use it. And hopefully, at the end, I can have moved you up the taxonomy so you can see. Oh, I see what Dave's done there, and I can use that in my lessons. So, just going to go through obviously a brief introduction. As I said, I've got a little staff notes page. You can make notes as we go along. Just a bit of background why or how it sort of came about that it's happening on the group for a minute. Back in 2009, obviously, when I was doing loads of stuff for Learn to Learn, I had to go away and research and investigate, and I did lots of little bits of reading, things that I've read, like Hattie, which is an amazing book, obviously tells you all the best methods of teaching, which is research and statistically proven, that sort of stuff. And I read Jeff Petty's evidence-based teaching, and this came up in it. But when I was at that stage, I wasn't really ready to have something so complex in my lesson, because in terms of theory classroom settings, I was still trying to get to grips with it because I'm a practical teacher by sort, so it took a little while to do it. So what I did instead is I wanted a way that I could actually see progress in my lessons. So I used the accelerated learning cycle, which is this, where I find out what the kids know to start with, then I teach them, then I set them a really challenging task, and at the end we reflect and see if they've gone from shallow to deep learning. And I used Bloom's taxonomy as a way of trying to structure this. So at the end I was doing lots of creating, evaluating, analysing tasks, that sort of stuff. Just to try and get this differentiation, this progress of learning going on. But I kind of realised actually when I've done all my research this year that solar taxonomy does all that much more simpler, and it's a million times better. Now, some of you may walk away at the end of this session and go, well actually, I don't think it's ready for me, I don't think it's right for me, it's not going to work. Some of you may think it does work, but it's just an option, it's just another thing to hear about. If it doesn't do anything for you, then obviously then you don't have to use it, but you know, it's good to try and keep up with different bits of practice and so on. So it stands for Structure of Observed Learning Outcomes. So it's the whole structure is to try and see what students are doing in your lesson and seeing if they're working up from shallow to deep learning. And it makes it really visual, really apparent that students are working from shallow learning at the start up to deep learning at the end. And when I've used it in my lessons for the topics that I've done, and I'll show you some examples in the second part, Kids have come into my lesson knowing nothing and then ended up being right at the very top and can link other things in and so on. They've really developed their thinking and understanding because of it. So it's a really, really, really good way of doing it. I won't read through these as you go, but there's some of the other things which it does. With Sean, we've looked at it in a music context, at just looking at planning, seeing how it could develop your planning and make sure that in your lessons, just as a bit of a recap, that you are going from shallow to deep learning. But the best thing, obviously, is if you start sharing it and get students in on the act and start learning the terms and that sort of thing, and you use these rubrics in your lessons, and and it's all differentiating outcomes on there and that sort of thing, which is really quite easy to do. Then obviously it makes the progress in your lessons so much more clearer, and it allows students to see what they need to do to get to the next level, which is obviously really powerful, because how many times do we hear in some of our staff meetings that students need to know where they're at, but obviously what to do to move forward. Well, I've already listed on here some of the things we need to do as teachers to move forward to the next level. So if you do that for your lessons, it again is a really powerful tool, and students can see that. Thrives on AFL and so on. It's great for students to post-it note, reflect, write a little brief summary about why they're at certain levels and that sort of thing, which works really, really well. And like I said, it's the whole thing about moving students through this deeper learning and trying to get to the highest end at the end, which I'll explain in a second. With the differentiation bit, there's something very complicated I did a couple of weeks ago, which I'll talk about, but you can even, like, with these rubrics and so on, when the kids come into a lesson, you can have them all start at different points of your lesson, and still they can work their way up. So you can have lots of differentiation going on in your groups, and it is quite easy to manage because it's all structured there and scaffolded for them, which is good. All the success criteria, again, really, really help. And like I said, all the self-assessment things work good. The last bit at the bottom, I did this a bit secretly with my Year 11 group in the last couple of months before their Year 11 exams, to try and help them structure their exam question and answers, because in the final section of our exam there's some 8-mark questions they've got to do, and they're really quite deep, and they need students to really not just talk about that particular topic, but link in other aspects as well. And when we used this, they were going from sort of like a 2 out of 8 mark questions to full 8 out of 8 mark answers, because they were using the methods that I taught them, and were bringing in different things and working up the stages and including it all in their answers. So it's really, really good to help develop that as well. And I know on the internet and so on, when I've chatted to the people, loads of departments are using that. English, I know, are using it quite a lot in other schools as well. So I thought I'd go through and explain exactly what all the different levels are and when a student might actually be at these levels in your lesson. Now the first one, the little dot at the bottom, is what we call the pre-structural. And that is when, if you're doing a topic, so for instance in my PE lesson I was doing something on somatotyping, some of my kids will come in and go, what? I don't know what you're talking about. So they will automatically be at pre-structural level. They're not sure about this topic, and they don't know anything about this subject. So some of you already, when you came in here, said, oh, I'm already at the bottom level, pre-structural. So that's where you're at. And actually, that's a really powerful thing to have at the start of your sessions, because the kids can then make the most progress, because they've started knowing nothing. At the end of your lesson, actually, do you know what? I've moved up like 4 levels, and I'm up to here now, and I can see how it is and what I've done. So it's a really, really good starting point to get going. So, like I said, a lot of the new topics we do, a lot of the students naturally just end up at the pre-structural level. It's really good. And obviously the visual dot, like a full stop, not knowing much, it is really helpful as well. In a minute as well, as we go up, there's going to be a list of verbs as well, which are really helpful when at those levels you use those sorts of words as well. So it acts as a bit PQ. And I'll send you this a link to this PowerPoint, this Prezi as well, so you can see it in your own time. The second level is what we call the unistructural. So in your lessons, obviously you then start giving bits of information, you start doing the teaching and start sharing the topic content. If a student only actually knows one bit of content from your topic, either because they weren't listening or because that's what you've covered, then they're at what we call the unistructural level. They've only learned one thing. I have one idea about this topic, but this is the time when they're gathering pieces of information. So at the end of your lesson, if you go, right guys, so what do we say about somatotyping? And one kid turns around and says, I know there's something about muscles and mesomorph, but they only know one thing, so they've ended up at a unistructural level. I haven't actually moved them up the taxonomy. I need to obviously work on that a little bit later. But I then know that one child in my class, next lesson I need to work them a bit harder and obviously do so and so. So it informs my planning as well. So that's when a student knows one particular fact about something. Obviously, if as the lesson goes on, you're given lots of these different facts, they've gathered lots of facts. And the next level is what we call the multi-structural. The learning outcomes show connections, but no significance overall meaning is brought together. So they know, for instance, that somatotyping has got something to do with muscles and body shape and I think something's called a mesomorph and that sort of thing. They know all these individual facts, but they don't know how they all link together. So they're still gathering information. So I know several things about this topic, but they're gathering multiple pieces of information, but not able to see how they all work together. So I've taught them all the little bits they need, but I haven't brought it together. They don't know what the bigger picture is. And obviously, this is a great stage to get the students at. This is the bit where obviously we're sharing our knowledge and so on. And again, we've got some different verbs on the side there, like define, describe, things like that. And I know in our topic, we've got to give lots of definitions, and that's great. But then they need to show what these definitions mean, and we need to take it to the next level, which I'll show you in a second. But it's all about these connections. They're not major connections. They've just got all these little facts. Next stage after that, this is the bit, the sort of the important bit, the pivotal bit in any lesson, and that's where obviously we then say, right, you know this about this, that about that, that about that, but now we bring it all together. What's the bigger picture? Okay, so in my lesson I've talked about somatotyping, which I know a lot of people here won't know about, and a lot of my students won't know about when they first meet it, and they know it's something to do with muscles and body shape and something called a mesomorph, but now they can all tie it together. Oh, somatotyping it's about the body shape, and a really muscular person who's got a big muscular frame, they'd be called a mesomorph. So they've linked all these ideas together, they can see how they all join up and that sort of thing. And again, it's all these different key verbs down the side there as well, which all the analysing words and explaining and classifying and putting things in sequences and order, see how they all work together, how it all ties together. And the key things at the bottom I put down there is the relationships, the key points and how they all interlink. Which makes the relational level probably the key part in our lesson. Now, I'll talk about how we did it with one of Sean's lessons as well, but the next stage is a little bit different. The next stage is where you really push and stretch the students to sort of like the bit beyond what I normally taught.
It's okay, it's for me.
All right, then. So the final stage on the ladder is what we call the extended abstracts, and that is where we are really challenging and developing the knowledge of our students. Okay, this is where we get to look at things in a different way, and Sean's going to talk about in a minute how he did it in his music lesson which he was doing. But for instance, I watched, I don't know if Chris is in as well, Learn Inspire doing his talk at Teach Me Cleveland about how he's doing the taxonomy, but he said that when he did his example, he's talking about volcanoes and how kids know individual facts about volcanoes, but when you put them together and that sort of stuff, about they've got lava and that sort of thing, and they form like peaks and that sort of stuff. But right at the very end, it's where you get to think differently, like, well actually, what was if lava didn't come out, but water came out instead? And that sort of stuff. And that then, you're now talking about erosion and stuff like that. So you change it and trying to develop their topics a little bit more. Or something that we've done in our lessons, so we then go and link to other topics as well. So in my last lesson I did a physiology thing, we were talking about the muscular system, but then I said, well actually, how does that work with the skeletal system? And I'd never done that before with a group. I've just taught skeletal, or the muscular, or the heart, and that sort of thing, but I linked it together. Now my students go, oh actually, the muscles then do this, and that does that. So we're bringing in additional topics as well, and it's developing a wider knowledge of the topic that I'm covering. And that's a really, really, really critical bit, actually. That's where we're pushing our A stars and our A students, because they can bring in other knowledge and so on in their exam questions and things like that. But like I said, that's just sort of something it's about rethinking it in a different way, or bringing in other topics and seeing how things link to other areas as well. So, now I'm using Bloom's, I'm using the Accelerated Learning Cycle, but I just want to go over why this has been just mind-blowing and just a difference in the level of my lessons quite quickly. Like I said, the bit versus Bloom's taxonomy, Bloom's is great, okay, obviously remember and understanding all the way up to creation and that sort of thing, but the problem is, in my lessons, I've never had a student, when I've used it, go, sir, I've just finished my analysing task, what can I do for my evaluating? They've never done it. It's not been a natural jump. One stage doesn't freely move to the next one very easily. It's quite confusing for some of the students. Whereas, with using this, with the taxonomy level, they know nothing, they know one thing, they know a group of things, they know how they link, and they can then link them all together and actually extend it beyond this topic and link something else in as well. So it actually comes together. Yeah, it's cool. So it actually comes together, and it's a really, really easy structure for the students to learn and build upon the next thing. And they can easily look at one of these and see what it is they need to do to get to the next level. And they don't even have to ask me now. They can say, what do I need to get to multi-structural? And they can look at it, okay, because it's written down there already for them to go. Again, it makes it really easy and clear for progress. They can see they're moving up, visually see, and there's nothing better for a student when they're actually, they know that they've moved up 3 levels in your lesson on the taxonomy, okay, to link it in. Peer assessment, the best word I've ever learnt this term, really simple, feed forward, okay. Again, Ria at staff meetings is saying, I know what they've done, but I need students to tell me what they need to do to move on the level. Well, it's all structured here again. It says what they need to do in this particular topic to get to the next stage. And because I'm sharing it with students, they can read that and see what it is they need to do to get to the next stage. So if anyone has that conversation with them, you, parents, learning leaders coming in and doing quick spot checks and so on, that student can turn around and go, well, I've done this, but what I need to do to get next is do this. And they can actually link it in a lot better. They're the 3 questions which obviously have come out from the thing as well. What am I learning? What do I need to do to develop deeper understanding and things like that. And I know it is a bit funny with multi-structural, extended abstract and that sort of thing, but once you learn it, it's actually really quite clear for the students. They can actually, it's only 5 extra words they've got to learn or 5 phrases they've got to learn. If you kind of embed it in your lessons and so on and have displays and so on, it makes it quite easy. I talked about differentiation, really, really simple. A kid could come in at the pre-structural, a couple of kids could come in at multi-structural, but you're catered for every student in that class because there are still next steps for progress, okay? It's not, I read a book the other day, or a blog the other day saying that in a lot of lessons, researchers found that some kids know some kids know a bit, and some kids know a lot, and you as a teacher have got to try and move them all up together at the same pace, but this does it for you if you just do it in your planning beforehand and get one of these sort of typed up based on the learning intentions you want to do. Progress, success criteria, and like I said, self-assessment, really, really easy because the rubrics are there and you can just use them and adapt them as you need. The language, as I talked about, it can be quite difficult at the start, as I said, but they become a powerful tool. And these are some schools around the country. I can't remember which ones they are now. I should do, but I can't remember. But obviously, people look doing these in different ways. I've seen some teachers using these at the end of a lesson, and when the class or students have actually done a particular task, say, right, last 5 minutes, reflection time. These are on the table. Right, what level you're at and why you're at that level. And then the student can then turn around and go, well, I'm at relational level because blah, 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 blah. I know some teachers have got one of these up on the wall and it's laminated and they've got post-it notes and students put David Fawcett, I think I'm an extended abstract because I can link the skeletal to the muscular system, and at the end of the lesson they stick it on the wall, and again that informs your planning. The students can show you visually how it works, and it's a powerful tool for doing that. And then I can obviously the next lesson pick up and say, look, this group of students are at the bottom, can you come and sit here today? You guys are extended abstract, can you sit over there today because I've got a new task for you, and I can then plan the next lesson out a little better. Again, it works better when the students are involved. So this is Take Holes, who's a teacher up in Barnes, I think it is, he uses this. His is the other way around because he's going from shallow to deep. Okay, but other people would have it the other way around and go shallow to deep and so on. But again, it's just a way of going from, like I said, quantitative to qualitative learning, and also shallow to deep learning, and getting it on your board and sharing it with other students. There we go, another school doing exactly the same thing with the different levels on there again to get the students involved in it. And there's some of the students using this at the end of a lesson, so they've done their own work. But now on this sheet they're just filling out where they are and what needs to do better and the progress and the lessons they've made and so on. So it really, really links in and allows them to see that. So based on what I've done there, so mid-session plenary before we get Sean in and I show you some of the stuff that I've done, have a quick look back at the rubrics, okay, and see where are you now roughly, and have we made any progress in my session? And hopefully we have, I hope. Has anyone made progress? Yeah? And does everyone know what they need to do to get to the next level? In case Ria comes in? Yeah? Cool. Alright, so there should be that structure there. I hope that there is that thing that we can move on as well. I just want to show you some examples. My trials up to late have been in secret. And what I mean by that is I've just been playing around with the planning of my lessons. And when I actually structure my lessons, I've been going myself up the taxonomy but I'm just about, I was going to do it in September, but I'm sort of in that in-between stage. I think I might do it now. I was going to start introducing the whole phrases and that sort of thing, and the rubrics as well. I might go in now, because that's when it becomes not just great like Bloom's is, but it becomes amazing, because they can then use these and see what it is to go next, and they get, the more they get used to it, the more they can work up. And a lot of other schools that are linking it with, they do it like Key Stage 3 and stuff as well, some even at primary. So I think my students are going to be ready to cope with the 5 new phrases and link on how it goes. So, what I did is, we did in the last lesson something about the aerobic system, which is about long distance runners and jogging and that sort of thing, and how the body can be keep stamina up for a long time. But then I came into the next lesson where we're going to look at the anaerobic system, but I hadn't told them that. So I put this up on the board and said if there's anything different from last lesson. So automatically in my head, I'm trying to see where the kids are at on the rubrics in my own head. Does any kid look at any student look at this and go, I don't know how he's doing this based on what we learned in last lesson, so it'll be pre-structural. Some students may go, sure, that's got something to do with the anaerobic system, so maybe that's going to spark a bit of discussion. So now they're at the unistructural. Some students maybe go, oh yeah, this we learned in science, blah, 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 and then they're at the multistructural. So, you know, this is my pitch, my start of my lesson, I was trying to find out what they knew about it. So I started with that. Got a bit of discussion going on, used my learning journey, learning objectives, which are increasing the difficulty. And then I went and tried to fill in the blanks and get every student in that class up to the multi-structural stage. So I had a 5-minute challenge, and I was going to go through these 5 particular areas, and I had to make lots of different notes as we went along, or mind maps, or whatever. And there'll be time at the end for them to collate their notes as well. So I was going to try and get my students in my planning up to multi-structural. So I went through all the different things, about how it all works, different equations, and so on. And then I'd give them time to then, in their groups, with their captains on each team, on each table team, to make sure they got all their notes up together and everyone understood and that sort of thing, and no one had missed anything out and that stuff. And there's resources on the table for them to go through as well. So at this stage, I've done my teaching bit, and they're all up to the multi-structural. So then, obviously, to boost up to the relational level, see how it all works together, that's the old thing. And then with Lauren, who's working my lessons as well, we started using what's called a solo taxonomy hot map, or a double bubble map. That's higher order thinking skills. This is called a double bubble hot map, where you can have 2 different particular topics. That's how they're different, that's how they're similar, and that's obviously how that one is different as well. Okay, so we're trying to make a connection. So I'm trying to get to relational level now and show where these things overlap. So that was our example one, and then Laura and myself gave out the blank ones. We did it on completely different topics, so we didn't want to give the answers away. And they went away then and started filling out these, which is really, really good. And started trying to tie it all together, the relational stuff. Then, still at the relational stuff, I wanted to see, well, actually, how does it all combine? Last week's lesson and this week's lesson. So this is between relational and extended abstract, so I'm now trying to tie in another topic. So this is what we did this week, and that's the stuff we did last week. And obviously Lionel Messi is a footballer who'll be jogging and sprinting at different parts of the game, and we had to annotate this and talk about when it overlaps and that sort of stuff, which is really, really good. And then the last bit, I did an example of how to use the hexagons. And we did some hexagons, which is where you have to make connections and links with other topics, and every side which touches another hexagon has to have a direct link to that. This is an example from, I showed the students, this is what they did, this is something different. And I even get to the stage now I'm colour coordinated, so one particular topic's on one colour, one on another colour, one on another colour, and I remember Dan Derham in my Year 11 class saying that he actively looks to link the different topics together to show a deeper understanding, and that's where we get to the extended abstract, because they're linking all these different topics together and so on. So I got the students to do that, which is pretty cool. I'll show you some of their work down here. So that's people like Benji Main. This is Benji Main and Lily Lawrence's, okay? And this is all based, this is the skeletal stuff, hinge joint and that sort of thing, to make it extended abstract. This is the anaerobic stuff that we did this lesson, and the red stuff I think was all the muscular stuff. So they're extending their knowledge because they're bringing in all the other topics I've done in the last couple of weeks, and actually I think for the last month, and using the hexagons pulled all together. And Anna Bower was amazing because she could tell me exactly how the respiratory system brought the oxygen into our body, how it then went into our bloodstream through the circulatory system, how it went to our muscles through the muscular system, and then how that made the skeletal system move. And I've never had a student do that in one go, and she got it all technically correct. Specific terminology all the way through. Normally students can say what that does, what that does, and what that does, but she got to extended abstract because she had linked every single topic we covered in our physiology unit together, which is brilliant. And that's absolutely fantastic. So that's how I've done it in my planning. But like I said, when I start introducing this and saying, for the skeletal system, if you just know different bones of the body, if you know how the bones work together to move, you can know how the muscular system works with the skeletal system to make that move, then that would make it easier for them, and they would see what it is they need to do and push on. And it's quite aspirational. Most students will want to get to the top because they want to get the best grade they can. So that's what we're doing next. Sean.
Okay.
Yes, ready for your bit.
Is there a slide?
There is a slide.
Okay. I'll try and keep, because Dave's thrown loads of stuff.
Yes.
So I'll try and keep mine a little bit straightforward, and hopefully mine's quite simplistic, because I think
Position to that.
I've only sort of dabbled with this a little bit.
Yes,
And so I can't say I'm anywhere near advanced as Dave is. And as Dave said, looking at this, it was more from a sort of a planning sort of approach. It was all to do with writing a pop song. Gina will know about this, because that's what we're doing with our current year 7. And so it was looking through how do we sort of like get them sort of scaffolded right from the beginning to a sort of, you know, quite a sort of exciting sort of level of deeper learning. And it literally, thinking about sort of where starting this, I know I talked about the planning, but from their point of view, one of the very first lessons was literally about sort of producing a basic mind map about, right, anything that you know about pop songs, just put it down. Because we're at sort of this pre-structure. And you'd imagine that people would immediately be, because of pop songs, you know, quite about here, sort of knowing a number of sort of facts and things. But actually, a lot of them were just writing out sort of sets of lyrics, or putting down people like Michael Jackson and you know, different sort of artists. Eventually, we got some youngsters writing sort of facts down about, it's got to have lyrics. It might be that there's a particular structure. Some people even put in things in like key changes, and also things to do with singing in a falsetto voice. That gave an opportunity to sort of like talk about sort of how those sorts of things might be linked to pop song writing, but also to this overall concept of we're writing for songs for an Olympic event. Okay, so we started talking about, so in terms of the lyrics, how does that fit? What do you need to think about an Olympic event? So it's about, well, we need to sort of get the spirit of the Olympics through the lyrics. And we watched some videos, Derek Redmond video, about how he struggled through in a race, and we jotted down some keywords about the spirit, determination, resilient, and all those sorts of things. And they started sort of thinking about how those words could fit into a verse or a chorus. Later on, we started sort of looking at the sort of, they brought up obviously information about chords, which was in this area here. So we looked at how that linked with the Olympics, and we talked about what's a celebratory event. So probably you're going to be using mainly major chords, because that's going to give you an uplifting feel. What would be the point of singing in a falsetto voice? Well, that's going to give lots of energy and passion, so that would probably link to the Olympics there. So all the different sort of ideas that they came up, the actual bit here was about, okay, we've got all those things which are part of pop song writing, but then how does that work with an Olympic event? Okay. And then to get to this final point here, to sum up very, very quickly, it was about sort of the extended bit that I was talking to Dave about, was okay, so you've got all those sort of elements, and you've written your chord sequence, and you've got your lyrics which are summing up the spirit. But what about if your Olympic event was in Japan? How would that make your pop song different? What about if your Olympic event was somewhere in India? And then it would be the youngsters obviously thinking about, well, okay, there's probably a particular type of scale that they might use then to sort of create their melody to give it that sort of Japanese sound, or they might start thinking about the different types of instruments that they might bring in that would make it completely different to a sort of more European sort of sounding pop song. Or they might start thinking about the type of harmony that would be different in a sort of a Japanese context to a sort of European or American context. And that's basically the progression that we got from not knowing very much to learning about a few facts, to linking those to Olympics, and then thinking, well, actually, if you're from a particularly different country, how does that change your song? What would you do differently? And that would really, really extend them at that particular point. Okay.
Good.